just got a couple of minutes just in case. Who's missing then?
I've done it on 2 projects in last year's budget.
Yeah.
We're on.
You ready to go?
Okay.
Ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Finance Committee for Nottinghamshire Fire Authority. I still get tempted to say Nottinghamshire Police Authority because of the building and all my association with it. But apologies for absence, please. There are none?
We have,
Sorry.
we have, yeah.
I'm subbing for Jodie.
Super sub, Wendy. Super sub. Wales could have done with super sub last night. Right, declarations of interest. Anybody got anything to declare? I see none. And the minutes of the last meeting, which was on page 3 to 14, I'll move that. It's seconded. We're okay, nothing jumping around on that? No, moving straight on to 4, which is Revenue, Capital and Prudential Code, and that's Maria. Thank you.
Chair. So this is the report predicting the outturn for the year up to the 31st of January. And the recommendations are for members to scrutinise the financial outturn forecasts as detailed in the report, to approve the slippage, acceleration and underspending capital programme, again, which is detailed in the report. I'll go through that, and to scrutinise the Prudential code monitoring within the report as well. So the report shows that we're forecasting an underspend initially of 621,000 for 24-25, but that has been reduced slightly because we've had some violence approved by the Chief Fire Officer of £250,000, which are linked to capital financing. As members will recall, what we've agreed before is that when we've got some underspends, rather than borrowing, we utilise some of that to mitigate the cost of borrowing and reduce the capital financing charges. So there's a saving on the fire link contract and 200,000 and additional interest receivable of 50,000 that have been moved into capital financing to reduce the amount of borrowing that the authority is doing. So table 2 shows the summary revenue, expenditure and funding position and it's split down by each budget area, with the final column showing the variances, and then there's an explanation from section 2.4 on page 17 that goes through each one of those areas of spend and explains what those variances are. So the sort of main areas really are employees, which is overspent by 492,000. That's a combination of a number of different lines, which is underspend on whole time pay, because we've obviously been under on the number of firefighters, an overspend on core pay, because that's kind of been used to sort of mitigate that, an overspend on non-uniform pay, which is really all around the pay award that was settled slightly higher than we budgeted, 0.2% higher. An overspend on pensions, but that is mitigated by additional grant that we've received on the income line. And then some other small elements relating to things like training. And then there's an underspend on premises of 93k, which is again a combination of separate lines. The main bulk of that is to do with electric and gas utilities, because we've changed the contract around that. And then transport related costs, there's an overspend of £80,000. Again, the main chunk of that is related to vehicle insurance and maintenance costs, which have increased. Supplies and services, we have an overspend, but that is made up of, again, a number of different variances, and the majority of that shows us partnership contributions, because we took on responsibility for the local resilience forum in 24-25, but that again is mitigated by grant on the income line, so those two net off. And what we have to do is show those costs within our account, so we show the expenditure and we show the income, so that's sort of not really an overspend as such. And then we've obviously got some additional income, and this is really where the sort of 371,000 underspend, really majority of it net comes from. So it's an increase in Treasury investment income, so we've achieved £182,000 more Treasury investment income than we anticipated, and then additional income from work carried out on behalf of the Building Safety Regulator, some additional income from the East Midlands Combined County Authority to fund some extra posts, additional income from insurance claims, and a number of smaller grants and things. So effectively the majority of the underspend relates to additional income, because the other areas are sort of offset each other. I don't know whether you want me to stop part way through so you can ask any questions.
Chairman, at the last full meeting, we agreed in principle, but we didn't vote on it, that we would have a look at bringing projects forward and moving into the unitary authority. We no longer have to be financially minded in that sense, so we could look at bringing projects forward. However, if the Chief Fire Officer is going to be moving money that we've underspent into paying off our debts, then that stops us being able to do that. Now, I know that he wasn't for us looking at bringing those projects forward and looking at bringing the spend forward. However, in essence, we agreed, and I think the leader will be looking at doing that. But we need to kind of stop, or at least the leader needs to speak to the fire officer about stop moving money around, because it's going to hinder us from being able to bring projects forward.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you can raise that with the leader just to see what the situation is.
Can I give you some clarification on that? So all this is done really in terms of the movement of money around is to stop us borrowing as much money. So what we're doing is saving the cost of interest. It doesn't have any effect on what you're talking about in terms of reviewing the capital programme, because we would obviously, we've not borrowed that money. We could obviously still go ahead and borrow money in the future. So what this is doing really is mitigating our interest costs at the moment and stopping us to pay an interest on something we don't need to, because we've got, it's a bit like having surplus money in your current account, so you don't have to put it on your credit card.
But that surplus money, if we're paying it off, then can't be used for a project. It means we have to loan again, and at the moment, the loan market is higher now than what it was when we took it out 5-6 years ago. So actually, it would make sense, from my thinking, for us to keep the money that we've got than paying off a lower interest rate than needing to say a higher interest rate out in a few months' time.
Well, I think in terms of the funding we've got, it's the reserves are not affected. So if you look at the table later in the report around reserves, our underlying amount of cash that we've got is not affected. So that's...
So what money was used to... sorry, Chairman, for you.
Right.
What money was spent from the reserves then?
That's in the table, Appendix A. That's the use of reserves for the year, so we're not using any more reserves than we thought we were going to use. And so the borrowing is slightly lower. So again, it doesn't have a
again, I think through the leader, it doesn't make sense in my head, and obviously there's people that are more qualified. Paying off debt now with lower interest rates, and then maybe in the future, if we do want to bring projects forward, paying higher interest rates, because we know with the war in Iran, it's causing us higher interest rates to take higher interest rates later. If we can just ask the leader just to speak to the chief, we don't need to do it now.
We can ask for some clarity on that, and bring it to the full authority.
Yeah, I will.
Whichever is the next convenient meeting.
I'll have a conversation with the Chief Fire Officer. I suppose for assurance for members, the message around the capital programme has been received and understood, and we are looking at how we can reprofile the capital programme. The challenge that we've got is we already had quite a challenging capital programme to deliver with very small internal teams, particularly in estates and procurement and our engineering teams. So we are looking at it, and I think your report comes on to the capital programme, so you'll see where we are with this year's programme and the slippage. But just to give you some assurances, we have heard that message as a principal officer team, but I'll happily take a message away for the chief as well.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Any questions? None? Right, we'll move to recommendations on page 15.
We've just done the revenue part.
Oh, sorry. I was signing them other things off, so I won't keep an eye on them.
Page 21 shows the efficiency savings, and table 3 shows the plan. And at the minute, we're looking at slightly under achievement of the efficiency target, but that's something we're looking at for the remainder of the financial year, because obviously this is only up to January. And then on the next page, page 22, that has table 4, which shows the movement in reserves, and that's outlined in Appendix A, which again doesn't show that our reserves are above the minimum level that the fire authorities agree. And then on page 22, table 5 shows the capital programme. So as just been mentioned, the outturn for that is showing some slippage, and then section 2.24 shows where that slippage is greater than £25,000, and split down into the different areas: transport, equipment, estates and ICT. And as Leela's mentioned, it's a very challenging capital programme in terms of trying to deliver all that, and there has been some slippage in terms of some of the delivery times, and in bringing some of the equipment into service, and we can't charge it to the current year unless the equipment sort of goods and services delivered. So it also shows an underspend on the capital programme, and where that has been achieved in terms of on page 23, section 2.25. Body cameras and some underspend on the IT system as well. And CFR, I can never say this, C for miss, that's it. And then table 6 shows an approved capital environment, which is part of the report around moving that underspend from compartment fire behaviour training into the joint HQ, where we're doing some works there. And then the last section of the report shows the Prudential code monitoring, which basically shows that all the indicators are positive in terms of the Prudential indicators, because part of that is affected by the amount of borrowing that we've done, and obviously I've said that that's lower than anticipated. And then there's one local indicator that's slightly higher, which is the upper limit for internal borrowing, which is linked to our receipt of the pensions grant, which means we have had slightly more income than we anticipated, and that's just meant that our estimate at the end of January is showing 20.16% rather than upper limit of 20%. But again, it's not a negative indicator as such, it just shows that we've had more grant than we anticipated. So, and then there's a section on the loan maturity profile which shows how our repayment of loans looks in future years, and again that's within the upper and lower limits. So the recommendations are the scrutiny of the financial forecasts, the approval of the slippage, acceleration and underspending the capital programme, and scrutinising the Prudential code monitoring.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Any questions? There are none, so we'll move that recommendation 10.1, 10.2 and 10.3. Seconded? Agreed? Thank you. Moving still on final audit accounts, completion of the report.
Okay. So this document came to the last Finance and Resources Committee in draft, and Richard went through it at the meeting. This really is to bring it back to as the finalised document, and the recommendation is for members to consider the contents of the report as attached at Appendix A. I don't know if you want to add
Richard.
anything.
Yeah, I can add a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
please.
so this report, 99% of it is exactly the same as the one that came to last meeting. The only things that have changed is on the very first page, where we changed the things like we intend to issue a modified opinion to we issue a modified opinion. And so all it does is turn it into this is where we think we're going to end up to this is where we did end up. So that's the headline context. The really positive outcome is that I seem to recall at the last meeting, I was a bit tentative as to whether we'd be able to fully rebuild assurance, in that we were saying that with a fair wind we'd be able to do X, Y, Z and get to a point of being able to rebuild assurance. So this report is full of lots of jargon, but the headline message is that we were able to. So we were able to issue a qualified audit opinion on your accounts, which normally would be terrible, but in the context of where you are is actually really good. And it then offers the route through. So if the year for the financial year that ends in 4 days' time, if that audit goes as well as the one that's just happened, you should then get another qualified audit report with hardly anything qualified in it. And then the year after, you should be able to get an unqualified audit report, which is as good as anyone can get. It's starting from a disclaimer position. So you are one of the authorities that's made the step forward. The statistics were all published just after the end of February. I think there were about 40 or 50 out of the 600 odd local authorities that were able to make that step. Within KPMG's audit portfolio, I know there's only 6 nationally that could do it. So that's really positive, and it's a testament to your finance team to be able to service a positive audit, because it's one thing doing an audit in an effective manner, which again, not everyone's able to do at the moment, but you're able to do that and have been able to do that for a while. But you've also been able to last year actually have an extra audit basically to go through and look back over the periods that weren't audited to sense check whether there's any risks that still sit in your accounts. Been able to complete all of that audit work, and basically it was in effect a clean audit report, albeit the technicalities of what I need to report and when. It's still the previous periods kind of hanging around until they fully unwind out your accounts. You're going to get some form of qualified audit report, but it's as good as it gets.
As good as it gets.
That's
good to know. Thank you. Any comments? No comments? No further things? Right, we'll move to that recommendation. Okay, agreed? Thank you. Right, that's moving on. A review of the accounting policies and estimates for statement of accounts, that's item 6.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So this document basically sets out the principles that we're utilising for the statement of accounts, which is just in the process of starting to be prepared for 2025-26. And the recommendations are that members approve the accounting policies which are detailed in Appendix A, approve the assumptions that are to be used in the actuarial valuation of the local government pension scheme's pension liability, and note the risks associated with estimated uncertainty within the financial statements related to property and actuarial pension valuations and how they're mitigated. So this is quite a technical area, I appreciate. So if I just go through the report, the accounting policies, obviously everything we do in terms of putting together a set of accounts is governed by CITFA Code of Practice and International Financial Reporting Standards, which we have to comply with. And that's something that obviously the external auditors review as part of their audit. For 2025-26, there's not any international accounting standards that have a major impact on our accounts. There are two issued in section 2.2, which talk about changes in foreign interest rates, and one around insurance contracts, but it's not our contract with the insurers, it's a different part of the insurance contract. So there's no major changes in accounting policies. In terms of estimation uncertainty, because the big things on our balance sheet are our property, plant and equipment and our pension liability, they make predictions going forwards of what those costs and liabilities will be. So there are some assumptions built in within that, and this report sets out what those are. So the valuation of plant and property and equipment is based on doing a review of our estate. And so we engage valuers each year who go out and look at a portion of our estate and do a valuation, or they do a desktop valuation depending on when the assets were last reviewed. So for 25-26, the valuers are basically reviewing all assets where there's been significant work done on them in the past year. They're having a full valuation, and assets that haven't had any significant works are having a desktop valuation. We're actually going over and above what the CITFA Code of Practice now says, because the CITFA Code of Practice has changed slightly, and that says you have a full valuation every 5 years with a desktop valuation in year 3. But because we'd already engaged the valuers, we've kind of done that extra level, and obviously it's tied into the work we're doing to bring back the assurance on the accounts as well. So that's a positive thing, really. And then the pension liability, we have a pension liability for the local government pension scheme and obviously the firefighters pension scheme as well. When this report was written, we hadn't got the information from the firefighters pension scheme, so this talks about the local government pension scheme. And on page 55, section 2.13, it shows you what we make assumptions around, which is discount rate, inflation expectations, salary increases, increases in benefits and mortality assumptions. But those are done in conjunction with an actuarial organisation that is experts in dealing with pensions, and similarly for the firefighters pension scheme as well. So the report just sets out what those assumptions are, and also addresses things around the issues of MacLeod, Sargent and Matthews, which obviously affect MacLeod affects both schemes, Matthews affects just the firefighters pension scheme. There are also some other pieces of legislation that have come out in terms of some of the legal cases around pensions for something called Goodwin and Virgin Media, but they don't have an impact on local government or firefighters pension schemes. So. And then Appendix A is a big long list of all the detailed elements in terms of how we are treating our accounting policies, and that shows underlined what's changed from last year to this year, which is mainly the financial year dates. And there's a section in there that updates on the valuation mechanism that I've just talked through for the estate side of the world in terms of properties. But other than that, there's no major changes to the accounting policies, but I appreciate it's quite a technical bit of the agenda, so if you've got any questions.
Just got one brief, going back to the valuations on land and property.
Yeah.
Are we using proper audited and capable estate agents and professionals and not just someone sat behind a chair?
Yes, we use a valuation company that's got those
They deal with land and property
credentials. Yeah,
properly.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Anybody else? No? Oh, sorry, Richard.
Just to follow on from the point, remember that the qualifications of the valuer is a key thing that we look at as part of our audit as well. So whether the valuer is in a decent place in terms of their experience and knowledge of your asset base to make an appropriate estimate is one thing. Also, then we check the information that is sent to them to make sure they get the right information to deal with that. So that's a key part of our work in there.
Are we doing comparisons? Of course, you know, we have one valuer and then we send it to a second valuer to get a sort of mean average, or are we just using the one?
Different approaches, they'll have their own approach. Quite often what they'll do within the valuation company is that they'll set a valuation, then they'll have some of them sense check from that point of view. Also our audit, we have professional valuers who work for KPMG who advise us on trends and things like that, so there's a sense check from that point of view as well. So there's quite an established process now to get the valuations right, and the nature of specific assets right down to fire stations. There will be an established way of valuing the fire station that our valuers will be aware of, and the people you've appointed will check that they're also following the right process and things like that. So.
Thank you.
No more questions? Okay, we'll move that to it's one page it's on, 2 pages it's on, page 57 and 58, and there are 3 items that were asked to agree, recommended, and I'll move that from the chair. Seconded and agreed. Okay, next bit is the agenda item 7, which is the piece that's been put before you, which is the corporate risk management.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the routine presentation of the corporate risk management report. So this comes every 6 months to the committee. The main meat of the report is from section 2.8 onwards, and I would also caveat just before I briefly talk through, because of the published deadlines and the dates for the reports, there's obviously some quite significant things going on in the world at the moment that have got the potential to impact on the organisation. We're very aware of that. You just won't see it reflected in the report because of the timing of when those things happened. So at section 2.8 we indicate that there are no risk areas on the current corporate risk register which are assessed as being very high, and there are 5 areas that are assessed as being high. Most of these will look familiar to you from previous iterations of this report that have been presented. So the replacement mobilising system project, I know members have received previous updates about. That is still rated as high risk, and we have increased the level of risk associated with that project since the last report. As members will be aware, we do have separate project oversight in place, both at a tactical level and at a strategic level, and satisfied that the dedicated area manager that we've got appointed to that project is well aware of the challenges and the issues with and the importance of delivering that project to the October deadline. We did see some technical difficulties with the release of the testing environments, which had put some pressure into the delivery timetable, but I'm pleased to report that those test environments have now been received, and hopefully when this report is presented again, we'll see that project is being de-risked. The next risk which we talk about, which is at section 214, is firefighter pension. Again, it remains high, but the risk has reduced since the last report. Again, members will be well aware of the complexities and challenges around the firefighter pension scheme, and that the demand and the workload that is reflected in the organisation while we make the remedy to impacted staff. Again, although it's high risk, it's manageable risk. Section 218 is reduced budget. This is stable since the last report. The ability to set a balanced budget always presents a risk to us as an authority, albeit that risk has been mitigated thanks to members' approval of the additional council tax flexibility, which was approved at February's Fire Authority meeting. There do remain uncertainties affecting the medium-term financial plan, and obviously changes in governance have got the potential to impact on precept setting going forward. We've previously talked about cyber threats, so this is at section 222 onwards. That remains static, but continues to be high risk for us, and I know we presented in more detail an exempt paper at December's Fire Authority where we talked about arrangements for that in more detail. And then lastly, just to pick up on industrial action, again, this was something that we talked about as an exempt paper in December. We have escalated the risk of industrial action. That's mainly due to not direct things that we're seeing locally, but nationally we're now entering into pay review time with the National Joint Council, where employers and representative bodies undertake those national negotiations relating to pay. So that increase in risk that you're seeing is reflected in the amount of activity that is now happening in the organisation to assure ourselves that we've got appropriate resilience plans in place if needed. So the recommendation is for members to endorse the approach to managing key risks, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Terry.
I've just got one, and you rightly point out the current climate that we're facing at the moment, particularly with the instability from the Middle East. But there's no mention of fuel costs on here, which I think potentially is a significant threat, because as we know, fuel prices are being ridiculously priced at the moment. What's our contingency for that fuel issue? Because certainly I've noted on motorways coming back from London that HGVs have been restricted to 200 litres per unit. Mm-hmm. Obviously the cost implications could have a significant impact on the budget, on our finances as well. So where are we sort of looking at the fuel issue at the moment?
Okay. So I think there's two issues with fuel. One is the cost of it, and then secondly is the availability of it. So as part of our standard resilience planning, we keep a substantial amount of bunker diesel. So from an operational perspective, we can run for a period of time without access to additional deliveries. And then with regards to fuel, but also gas and electric, we're in contracted services for those. So you're right, we will see a price increase if things continue the way that they're looking at the minute, but it's likely to not be immediate. And I don't know, Maria, if you've got any more information that you want to add to that.
Exactly what you've said, because we're in contracts, obviously it doesn't happen, but long term, if the position continues, then it would have an impact. But we do have some funds within reserves that are earmarked for this sort of issue, so that we would have, you know, a mechanism to support those costs.
It wasn't so much the electricity or it was the fuel, and having making sure that the plants are deployable because of the, having fuel to deploy. So
so we do have as well. So we've obviously got our local plans, which we've got statutory responsibility as a Category 1 responder to have business continuity plans in place, of which one is for loss of fuel. There are also established plans which I know are being reviewed for the local resilience forum in Nottinghamshire about how, if we did get to a point of fuel shortage, that fuel would be prioritised. And again, next stage up, there'll also be national plans that they would invoke if we got to that point.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, along
John,
the same
over
lines, we were obviously aware that last week Labour government announced that they would be looking at rationing fuel if we got to that road. Obviously, you've just mentioned that we're all right here, we've got a stockpile. What about our staff? Because we don't want them queuing up at petrol stations for hours trying to get enough fuel to get in. Have we got something in lines to make sure they're able to get into work?
So again, I think within our business continuity plans, you'll see our staff will be partitioned into sections, and the approach that we take might be different depending on what role they undertake for us. So for example, we have flexi-duty officers who mobilise to incidents in their own vehicles. We will put in place different arrangements for them to make sure that we can maintain our operational capability versus, for example, office-based staff, where if we needed to, we could invoke working at home arrangements if there are challenges. We're not seeing that coming through at the moment, but obviously it would be neglectful of us to not be thinking about these things if needed.
Okay, John.
How much stock of diesel for the appliances do you actually have then?
I can get you the number. I can't tell you it off the top of our head, but all of our whole-time fire stations have got bunkered diesel, and then we do have a number of on-call stations that have got it as well. So I can get you the details of what that is in terms of
just
litres.
curious, because I can't predict how long this is going to go on.
No, but I could also give an indication as to the length of time that bunkered stock would be able to keep us going for, if that would be useful to you.
Yeah, pop it through. Thank you.
Okay. And I think actually in Nottinghamshire we're quite well off for the bunkered situation, aren't we?
Yeah, we do adopt quite a prudent approach, I would say. So in comparison to both other fire services and other partners locally, we do maintain a high level of bunkered stock.
A lot of places when, with the police, when we had fuel problems before, a lot of them, Leicestershire, I know, they ran out completely. So they grounded the police force. We kept the bunkers. I remember the motion coming up, and you might have done, Marie, they said, we'll get rid of all the bunkers. And anyway, we outvoted it, a committee like this, and we kept the bunkers, so they are significant stocks, but they won't last forever, will they?
Well, no, it's... If you speculate on fuel prices, you can save a few quid, can't you?
It can. Well, we did discuss it the other day, didn't we, in the pre-brief of the risk of it. If there's a significant move, what would we do? Which way would it go through? The full authority or come through here, where we're highlighting there are serious risks now?
I think we would...
To the budget, that is, not to do.
Yeah, we would seek to use whichever meeting comes first, really. Okay. So we do also, I think, have the option of policy and strategy committee if in exceptional circumstances as well. So
it's I've been here when we had the fire strike, and I tell you what, I've not had a Terry Hill note for the army, but absolutely brilliant. It is absolutely regimented from this building over there, where day and night. And they've got it. It's their job, but they make sure the supplies are in the right place, the vehicles are right, and everything is protected. And that was another question I was going to ask. Can we just check, because there's lots of fuel thefts at the moment, that our security is not just a little lock from Wilco's or somewhere. It's properly got something.
And obviously for the business in at home, nothing's kept on site.
So you can see it, don't you? These great big building and a stupid little lock or something on it, or alarm to make sure. But with that, are there any more questions? None. So we'll move that recommendation, which is somewhere on these pages. Endorse the services approach to managing the key risks to the authority. So move it, seconded, and agreed? We are agreed, thank you. So I think we're moving on to 8, aren't we, which is a restricted bit. Somewhere. I don't have to read all that, I can't do. So that's the exclusion of the public. To the public, if anybody's watching. This is the excluding the public from the meeting, a consideration of the remaining item in accordance with Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 under Schedule 12A, Part 1, Paragraph 3, as the information relates to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, Having regard to all the circumstances, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information insofar as the information is commercially sensitive to both the service, its suppliers, and releasing it could negatively impact on the service, achieving the best possible value for money. So I move that, or agreed.